There's a simple process to getting remote developer jobs that nobody teaches. I broke it down in a free training that you can unlock in the link below. Now it's time to finish our lesson about handling errors in Python. And we are going to talk about raising your own exceptions. You might be asking, why the hell would I want to raise my own exceptions if Python already has about 70 exceptions mapped that I can use? It's because the exceptions that Python has are not specific for the business rules that your application must have. That's the answer, okay? So when you are coding professionally, when you are building applications professionally, you are building applications that solves some problems, right? Let's pretend that we work for a school that have a system for the students, and these students can register in the system, they can log in, and when they log in, they can see their grade, their classes, the schedule that the classes. Anyway, so can you imagine the number of specific scenarios that must be validated in order to guarantee that everything works properly according to the business rules of that school? You know, this is why you need to know how to raise your own exceptions, because there are many scenarios that are going to happen only in that specific context of the application that you are building, right? So let's simulate some basic ones just for you to know how to raise your own exceptions, and let's use the same example that we previously saw. We are going to ask the student's name in order to register the student in our system, for the student to be able to log in the future. All right, so input name. The student must type its name for us to register in our system. But what if the student types a number instead of its name? We are going to have some problem in the future, right? The school is going to refer that student as a number. That don't make any sense. So we must not allow the student to create its account if the name that the student typed is a number, right? So name must be a text. Name must not be a number. This is one business rule, specific business rule for this system, right? So how can we check if what the user have inputted here is not a number? You still didn't see the functions of Python. We are going to see the functions in the future, but now we have to use a function to validate this. All right, so if you type the name of the variable dot is alpha, open and close parentheses, this is what we call a function. Don't worry about it now, you're going to see the functions in the future. But basically this function tells us if the data has only letters. All right, so let me show you. If I print this, you're going to see that if I type a number, we have false. Let's put letters and numbers. False. How about now? True. Only letters. So based on this, we can guarantee that we are only going to allow the student to create its account if the name that the student typed has only letters, right? So if I put an if here, and in this case I can use the keyword not, because I'm checking if the name has not only numbers to raise an exception, right? So raise value error. So this sentence here, we are basically validating if this data has not only letters, we are going to raise the value error exception, okay? But as we are writing specific scenarios, we can open and close parentheses here and type your name must contain only letters. All right, this is basically the message that I want to print. Let's see what happens now. Name 123, value error. Your name must contain only letters. So you see that this is a value error, an exception that we already know, but the message that this error is showing is the message that we wrote, that we have written, right? So that's how you raise your own exceptions. You can validate something and use the keyword raise, put the exception, and put the description that fits your scenario. But as you already saw, this type of message is too technical. It's too technical. So we can use the try except to handle these errors. So let's put here everything inside of a try block. Right now we have our try block, and we can accept, right? Accept, print error. And you see the probable problem that this way of handling the exception that we have raised may cause. See, if we use try except, we are only going to have the message that we have put here, right? So the right way is putting like this, right? Let's see. Same problem. How do I show the message that I have written inside my personalized raised exception? In this case, we do something that we call catching the exception. So the value error S E is the right way to do this, because we are basically telling Python, if you fall into the except block based on a value error raised exception, catch this exception into this variable, and then you can manipulate the exception in the except block. In this case, I'm printing the exception here, okay, because the exception is into this variable and I'm printing here. This is just the name of the variable, okay? You can put another name here, but as a convention, I usually put the E, that is the first letter of exception, as the variable name. All right, so now let's try again, and now we have the exact message that we have raised into our personalized exception, that only happens based on the business rule that we have validated here, right? And the same way you saw in the previous try except topic, you can put many other validations inside of this try block. So here we are validating the name, but to create this account, we are going to ask more data, right? Ask for more data. So email is one of them. Email, input, email. How can we validate if the email is right? Every valid email has the @ sign into the structure, right? If the person types something like memysite.com, this is not a valid email. If the person types something like Felipe Maros 123, this is not a valid email, right? So how can we check? We can check if there's an @ sign into the data that the person typed, that the student typed. Let's put as a comment here, email must have an @ So if @ in email, in this case, not if there is no @ sign into the email data that the student typed, we are going to raise same thing, value error, and the message is going to be you must type a valid email. All right, let's see what happens when we run this code. Name Felipe. We can see that it passed our first validation and it didn't raise the your name must contain only letters exception, and now it's asking for the email. So let's put like this, felipe@gmail.com. You must type a valid email. And you can see that we didn't need to write another except block for this specific scenario because it's also a value error, right? It's also a value error exception, but the message is different. And as our except block is catching the exception here, and we are printing the exception that was raised by the try block, we are printing the right message. Okay? And just to finish, let's put another validation here. We have the validation of the name. We are getting and validating the name. We are getting and validating the email. Let's get and validate also the age. So what is one of the most important validations that an age must have? The age cannot be negative. So age must not be negative. This is the validation that we are going to implement. So let's get the age, input age. If age is less than 0, raise value error. Your age must not be negative. Okay. That's it. Let's run. Name Felipe, email felipe@gmail.com. Passes normally. Age -10. Type error. Right, we have a type error here. because I forgot to parse the age is a number. All right, in this case we got the type error. That's why this exception is not treated, because I'm only raising the value error and I didn't create an except block for the type error. But we can review our code and see if there is a risk of getting this scenario, and we can implement later. All right, but let's continue with our example here. I forgot to typecast, so now I just typecasted, and the age now is going to fall into the scenario that we have implemented. So name Felipe, email felipe@gmail.com, and age -10. Your age must not be negative. So we just raised this personalized exception. Let's just test passing all of the data the right way. So Felipe, email felipe@gmail.com, age 30 works normally. And we can, in this case, if no exception was raised, you already know that we can use the else block to print registration succeeded, right? If no exception occurred, registration succeeded. And finally, we can print a farewell message like follow the school in social media at school. All right, you already know how else and finally works, so let's run it again. Name Felipe, email felipe@gmail.com, and age 30. Registration succeeded. Follow the school in social media. So this is our lesson about error handling in Python. Stop applying randomly to jobs and learn how to get a remote job the easiest way. Click the link in the description to unlock it for free.